Thank you.
If everyone would mute, that would be much appreciated.
Everybody mute, yeah, except me, please, and Chelsea. All right. Good morning, all of you. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker this morning is Chelsea Schultz. I've gotten to know Chelsea at the Dane County Reentry Service Fair, where she comes to represent the Department of Civil Rights. But her official title is the Equal Opportunity as an Equal Opportunity Investigator with the City of Madison's Department of Civil Rights, the Equal Opportunities Division. She has been doing that for 3.5 years and is in her current position for 4 months. So, Chelsea, without further ado, you can continue to introduce yourself and tell us about the Department of Civil Rights, which I think most of us don't know very much about.
Thanks for having me. As Pat said, my name is Chelsea. I've been with the Department of Civil Rights for 3.5 years. My previous role was as an admin clerk, and in January, I was promoted to an Equal Opportunities Investigator. I come from a healthcare background, so I have lived my entire adult life in service to others, taking care of people, and now I'm doing it in a completely different way than I was previously, but I am really enjoying the work. I am loving the new position, getting to dig into what has happened to folks to determine if a business or an entity has discriminated against someone or not, to help be able to provide remedy. So what I'm going to do is I made a PowerPoint to kind of walk through some things, adapted some of our trainings that we do to be able to share the most, I guess, important information with you all. Feel free to ask questions as we go. And let's see here. I'm going to ask that you bear with me. Like I shared earlier, over the weekend, I set a dual monitor at my home. So this is the first time I am presenting using that. So hopefully this goes as smoothly as normal. So we're going to do kind of an intro to discrimination and focus on the Equal Opportunities Ordinance and Division. So the learning objectives today, I'm going to educate you about the Department of Civil Rights, the Equal Opportunities Division, and the Equal Opportunities Commission. We're going to define the basics of discrimination. We're going to learn briefly how to file a complaint of discrimination. We'll discuss what happens after a complaint is filed with our office, and then I'm going to show you the Equal Opportunities Division annual report, which is going to give some of the data points that Pat asked about to really hit on who's seeking our services and kind of outcomes for folks. So who are we? There is the City of Madison Department of Civil Rights, which was created in 2006, and it's made up of 3 divisions, which is the Equal Opportunities Division, EOD, the Affirmative Action Division, AAD, and the Equity and Social Justice Division, ESJ. The city loves acronyms, so I'm going to be using quite a few of them, but we're going to focus on EOD, the Equal Opportunities Division today, and the work that we do on behalf of the Equal Opportunities Commission, or the EOC. The Equal Opportunities Commission is the governing body of the Equal Opportunities Ordinance, which is Madison General Ordinance 3903, and it was created on December 12th of 1963. So we're coming up on our 60th anniversary. We're working on having some sort of a celebration for that, but that is a really big deal. It was one of the first commissions of this type in the country. The EOC is currently made up of 13 total members, consisting of 11 volunteer residents of Madison and 2 alders. They meet monthly and they create a yearly work plan that dictates their areas of focus. This year, the few of the items that they're focusing on are updating and possibly expanding the Equal Opportunities Ordinance, partnering in a statewide coalition on how to push for housing reform and housing as a human right, creating a truth and reconciliation process, and increasing engagement and outreach to the community in a culturally competent and accessible way, specifically focusing on those who are homeless, disabled, and or experiencing housing challenges. So the Madison Equal Opportunities Division and the law, how this applies. Madison has one of the country's most comprehensive local, civil, and human rights laws. The goal and mission of the Equal Opportunities Ordinance, Madison General Ordinance 3903, is to enable individuals to live, work, and play free from discrimination. The MEOD complaint process helps remedy complaints through the mediation and conciliation process. I'm going to touch more on this later. And the MEOD also helps by providing education and training to the community, just like we're doing here today with this training. So our boss, Byron Bishop, who is the Equal Opportunities Division Manager, promotes a government without walls philosophy. We understand that certain individuals who experience discrimination don't report it for several reasons. They might have trust issues with the government, there's an inaccessibility to our government offices, or really it's just an unwelcome environment in the government buildings. We found that those individuals prefer to prefer to report their problems to their trusted sources, the folks where they feel most comfortable going to, and they may already be working with them. This is the reason that we created our Certified Community Partners program. Our Certified Community Partners are organizations or agencies who wish to provide a higher level of support to community members who experience discrimination by providing in-person complaint writing assistance to members of the public, including those referred by our office, the MEOD, to allow our office to remain neutral. We also offer a monthly community partner training to anyone in the community who would like to learn more about the complaint process and what we do here in EOD. We hope that our training will help community members like yourself recognize what unlawful discrimination is and encourage members of our community to file complaints or to reach out to our office or one of our certified community partners if they feel they've been discriminated against.
Chelsea, I'm going to interrupt you here just for a moment. A few years ago, before COVID, we did have Kim, and I can't remember, unfortunately, her other name, come and do that presentation for us. And all of the women who were there that day, and there were about 30 of us, learned how to do exactly what you're talking about. Be the person to refer people to your department. We learned how to recognize or just be available to listen to someone's concern and be able to, say, let's go to the Department of Civil Rights, well, let's look at the Equal Opportunities Commission and see if it can be helpful. So yeah, so we're familiar with that. That's great. Please, I just wanted to put it together for those of us who remember that.
And we've
Thanks.
actually revamped that training quite a bit.
So I understand.
So my coworker, Julie, who is now the program assistant, she is the front line when you call. She's the person who's reviewing the complaints. When I was in the admin role, we really took a look at what that training looked like, and we were making it really technical for people. And we were almost teaching people that they needed to investigate the information that people were bringing at the start. And all we really need is someone who is right there, who's able to help them fill out that complaint form online, to just sometimes help put the information into words. And we really tried to make it more readily digestible, more accessible. There's a formula that I'm going to show you in a little bit that really seemed to help the community partners that we've worked with break it down and understand what we're looking for on those complaint forms. So we've redone this entire training, again, trying to make it easier for folks to understand. One thing we did learn with COVID is a lot of the agencies and organizations who are certified community partners no longer have the bandwidth or capacity to provide that in-person complaint writing assistance that they usually did. So we've really scaled back the number of partners that we have. We have about 5. The Dane County Job Center is one of them. The Tenant Resource Center has been absolutely fantastic when it comes to housing issues, workers, justice, Centro Hispano. I am trying to think off the top of my head who else, but the community partners that we had, they're few and far between now because again, people just don't have that extra capacity. Workloads have grown from COVID, staffing has reduced. Some people just aren't back to in-person anymore. So this is why we developed our monthly community partner training where no one is certified. It's just folks who want to come and learn, kind of like you're doing today, about some of the information so that you can help just spot and recognize when someone's telling you something of like, hey, that sounds like that might be discrimination. You might want to file a complaint. Maybe we, like you said, Pat, reach out to the Department of Civil Rights. You know, they might want to know more about this. So
Good.
that's absolutely excellent.
Good. I love the government without walls, so please continue.
Yes. So one of the things to note is that historically government is really good at getting data and spending a lot of time talking about that. But those conversations alone aren't enough to inspire change. Pat told me that this is a group who is, you know, very direct, very blunt. We had a conversation in our staff meeting on Friday about trying to fully staff our department. We're actually down an investigator at this time, and we have seen a huge influx of complaints that are coming in compared to previous years. And with already being understaffed, we're seeing a need to increase our staffing. We asked for an additional position last year, and the Common Council shut it down. And our director, Norm, was talking about collecting all of these data points to be able to show the need for additional staff. And I asked the question of, at what point does collecting those data points become more of a hindrance and a barrier to the residents of the community who are already underserved? And, you know, at what detriment does it come to them to collect these data points? So big proponent of this government without walls. I am not a good government employee. I know this is recorded, but I don't believe in doing things the way we've always done it just because that's how we do it. Like I said, I dedicated my life to the service of others, and I care about the residents of our community. I care about good use of taxpayer dollars. I care about making sure that our residents are served and not just collecting data points, actually doing things, which is why I love being in that investigator role. So we have 3 different levels of enforcement agencies for the equal opportunities laws. At the federal level, we have the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, or the EEOC. They handle employment complaints. There is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that's HUD. They handle housing, obviously. And then the U.S. Department of Justice, or DOJ, and they handle more of the criminal aspects. There's the state level, which is the State Equal Rights Division, and then the local level, which is us, the Madison Equal Opportunities Division. And we do all have work sharing agreements to be able to do work on behalf of each other. And the complaint areas that the City of Madison Department of Civil Rights Equal Opportunities Division covers are employment, housing, public accommodations, and city services and facilities. Employment complaints could be filed for all types of employment, including full-time, part-time, seasonal, and temporary employment or employees. We can accept cases that involve employment agencies and labor unions. However, we cannot accept cases involving independent contractor relationships like Uber. However, there is some changes that are coming in that sense, where folks who are driving for Uber as a rideshare app are considered independent contractors, but if they are doing Uber delivery, they may be covered under these types of equal opportunities laws. Housing is defined as a residence or a place where people live. We accept cases that involve selling or renting, as well as those concerning mobile homes. Public accommodations are places and services that are open to the public. It also includes places where goods and services are either free or available for a cost. For example, a place of public accommodation could include a clinic, a mall, a movie theater, a barbershop, a motel, a restaurant, or a tavern. And city facilities and services involve property that is owned by the City of Madison and the services that Madison provides, or the City of Madison provides. So we're going to go over some basics of discrimination. So discrimination is an adverse action motivated by a person's membership in a protected class. So we're going to break this down, and we're going to focus on the 3 words that are in bold: adverse action, protected class, I apologize, and motivated. I guess motivated isn't in bold. So first, in order for a person to experience discrimination, they have to belong to a protected class. A protected class is a group of people who are protected from discrimination by law. I talked about earlier the Madison Equal Opportunities Ordinance. This law has 30 protected classes, and you're probably familiar with some of them: sex, race, color, etc. The second component to unlawful discrimination is an adverse action. An adverse action has a negative impact on a person's employment. This could be a failure to hire, a suspension without pay, discipline, harassment, or even termination. The third requirement for unlawful discrimination is a causal connection. In other words, the adverse action is motivated by their protected class. This connection can show itself in a lot of ways depending upon the situation. For example, a causal connection can be made with comparisons, like how men are paid in comparison to women within a job category. It could also be shown through various types of documentation, such as the company's policies or email communications, or with narratives or with witness statements. If these things, three things are present in a situation, the person is a member of the protected class, they experienced an adverse action, and there is a causal connection between their protected class and the adverse action, then they have experienced unlawful discrimination. Any questions on that? Because that's a lot.
That's pretty clear. You broke it down well. I like the idea of women being paid less for a specific job than men. I didn't realize that that was something that we could bring, maybe not bring a suit, but you know, complain about lawfully.
A lot of times with that, there is documentation that kind of has to be shown. So one thing to note when filing a complaint, there is a burden on the complainant to have to be able to show beyond a reasonable doubt that the respondent, so the business, the entity, the employer, the housing agency did violate that equal opportunities ordinance, that their actions were motivated by that protected class. So that's something that not everybody necessarily has information to kind of that pay information. For example, there was a complaint that came in where this was a female worker in the electrical industry, and they were in a union, and all of the male coworkers were offered training. And when this female coworker asked for, or the complainant asked for training, they were denied training. And when they went to their boss and they complained that they weren't receiving the same training and opportunities as the male coworkers, they were actually retaliated against. So when everyone took their layoff season and received unemployment compensation or insurance, this person did not. Theirs was denied, but all of the male coworkers were. So they believe because they complained they weren't receiving the same training opportunities as the male coworkers, that they were then retaliated against by not receiving that unemployment insurance. So there are multiple different facets that can happen, but with that, you know, it was pretty clear that there was retaliation with that. But you have to prove beyond kind of that reasonable doubt that there was pretext for their decisions.
Right. I also am interested. I think the denial of or refusal to rent is something interesting. I've been looking at a number of apartments myself. Nobody asks specific questions, but every now and then in certain areas, I sense a concern about background checks. And you know, Chelsea, you and I deal with individuals who've been system involved, and this is a huge issue. So yeah, I'm delighted that this exists.
The background checks with housing is a big one, where unfortunately there isn't a protection for arrest or conviction record within the area of housing. The Equal Opportunities Commission is looking to see if there's anything that they can do within the ordinance, or at least with Section 8 housing, or the housing that's coming through the City of Madison Community Development Association. If there's anything that they can do to help people who have nonviolent felonies or convictions to be able to get housing, to see if there's any sort of protection in that area. So I know that is a big thing with what we do with Just Staying. So yes. Yeah. So lawful versus unlawful discrimination. Not all types of discrimination are going to violate federal or state laws that prohibit discrimination. some types of unequal treatment are perfectly legal and cannot form the basis for a civil rights case alleging discrimination. Some lawful discrimination lawful discrimination is a set of policies, procedures, or rules that are enacted by a person or an entity for non-discriminatory business reasons. So a smoking ban in a public building or a denial of housing based on credit history, a landlord refusing to rent to pet owners, and then as we've seen more recently, maybe not as much now, mask and vaccine mandates. Some unlawful discrimination, it's the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, could be a landlord discriminating against people with service animals or emotional support animals, an employer refusing a reasonable accommodation based on a disability, or employees being treated differently based on race, sex, etc. So next, I'm going to show you, if it will load, our Hey Did You Know video on the protected classes in the city of Madison. I will note that there are 30. This video is dated at the moment. It says 28. We're working to update it, but as you all know, government moves very slowly, so we're working with what we have.
Hey, did you know the city of Madison has 28 protected classes?
That's the most of any city or state in the country.
A protected class is a group of people with a common characteristic which the law has deemed protected from discrimination.
In 1963, the City of Madison Common Council adopted the Equal Opportunities Ordinance, which currently identifies 28 protected classes.
The ordinance prohibits discrimination of those groups, specifically in the areas of housing, employment, use of public accommodations, and city facilities.
Here are the 28 protected classes: sex, race, religion, color, national origin or ancestry,
Age for people 18 or older, handicap or disability, marital status, lawful source of income, which includes rent assistance,
arrest record and conviction record, but only in the areas of employment and public accommodations. Less than honorable discharge status, physical appearance, sexual orientation, gender identity, political beliefs, familial status,
Student status, social security number disclosure, domestic partnership, citizenship, credit history in the area of employment only,
genetic identity in the areas of employment and housing, victim of domestic abuse, sexual assault or stalking in the areas of housing only, retaliation, unemployment in the areas of employment only, non-religion, and homelessness.
If you feel you've experienced unlawful discrimination, please contact the City of Madison Department of Civil Rights at 608-266-4910 or email dcr@cityofmadison.com.
So we all have protected classes, and we want to break down the notion that discrimination is something that can't happen to us. So if you'll take a moment to look at the protected classes on the screen and think about two that you belong to. We all identify differently within each. For example, the marital status protected class. Well, I identify as married. Some of you may identify differently. There may be single, divorced, widowed, etc. For the age category, I am 39 years old. I am sure we have a multitude of different ages here. So for example, with that age, when it comes to discrimination, it's usually age 40 and older. And then for the City of Madison, we recognize 18 and older. So for my class, it would be under 40. And for some of you, it may be over 40. So again, while we all identify ourselves as a multitude of many protected classes, in complaints of discrimination, it's only necessary to note those class or classes that we feel we were discriminated against. So looking at the screen, the protected classes have different colors. Pat, I never asked, you're able to see the screen and it's just this one that my mouse is moving on, not the multitude of screens.
Yep.
Good.
Perfect, perfect.
So there are different colors of protected classes. The purple classes on the left are recognized at the local, the state, and the federal level. Green protected classes are recognized at the local and state level, and the Black protected classes are exclusive to the City of Madison, and they're only recognized at the local level. So again, as I noted, these protected classes have expanded since that Hey Did You Know video was created. We now recognize receipt of rental assistance. It was previously kind of buried under our source of income protection. And in October of last year, we added a building code complainant protection, which protects folks who have made a complaint to either their landlord or some sort of enforcement agency like building inspections or public health of building code violations, and then the landlord would take some type of retaliatory action toward them, like non-renewing, eviction, raising rent, harassment, a multitude of other things. So that is a new protection. Like I said earlier, we are short-staffed, and unfortunately, 2023 was supposed to be our year of training and outreach to really share the information that we have about these new protections, to help educate the folks who are now coming in for the town of Madison. But being short-staffed, we have not been able to get that training and outreach out there like we want. So folks like you are the few that are learning about these types of things. We do the other training and outreach events like the monthly Just Dane reentry service fair, like I do with Pat. And then we also do a monthly job center training focusing on different areas of discrimination each month. Other than that, our trainings have been really limited to just that monthly community partner training. But we hope once we are fully staffed to at least what is within our contract that we can start to pick up some of these trainings.
Chelsea, I just want to point out
in the
that
chat.
Marcy asked about gender identity. You know, it's such a big deal right now going
genetic
on,
identity.
and with our schools, our parents. Kids don't seem to matter about it too much, but how often are these kinds of discrimination concerns about gender identity brought to the Department of Civil Rights?
Sure. So I know, Marcia, you put genetic identity, so I want to hit on what gender identity is and what genetic identity is. Now, I am not completely versed in all of the different definitions. So to very quickly hit on from our training last month at the Job Center, which was sexual orientation and gender identity. So your sex is what you were assigned at birth. Your sexual orientation is how you feel in your heart, who you love, essentially. Your gender identity is how you think of yourself, and your gender expression is how physical appearance overall, how you look as your gender. It can present in a multitude of different ways. Genetic identity is your genetic makeup, and how that is protected is it is illegal for an employer, let's say, to discriminate against you because they find of perhaps you have genetic markers for cancer or Parkinson's disease, and they would not want to allow you to be part of certain benefits programs, or to maybe not want to employ you because they know that there are those precursors. So until those things actually come into play, so let's say I am genetically predispositioned to have Parkinson's disease. I've had genetic testing. My employer finds out that I have the genetic markers for Parkinson's disease. Until I actually start showing symptoms of Parkinson's disease, I would be protected from any sort of discriminatory action under genetic identity. But once those symptoms come into play, it would become a disability. So that genetic identity is more those precursors, those markers. Genetic identity, one thing to note, is not part of the biological sex that you were at birth. So those are two separate things. Right. So that is one thing that's not under genetic identity. Did I kind of answer your question, Marcia? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Any other questions on the protected classes that we see right now? All right. So some frequently asked questions that we get. Are people visiting our community protected? Yes, Madison General Ordinance 3903 allows protections for residents and those visiting our community. Can I file a complaint against the city of Madison? Yes. However, all complaints against the city are going to be transferred to the state of Wisconsin Equal Rights Division for investigation. The city can't investigate itself, nor the following organizations: Madison Metropolitan School District. That actually falls under the jurisdiction of the Department of Public Instruction for any student issues. If it is an employment issue, then that would fall with the state of Wisconsin Equal Rights Division. The DMV, or the University of Wisconsin systems. These are considered state entities. They're outside the jurisdiction of the city, but ERD, State Equal Rights Division, would have jurisdiction. And thanks to our work sharing agreement, we can open that complaint and transfer it to them. And then lastly, the police department. These complaints are handled directly by the Madison or your local police and fire commission or the Department of Justice. We can't accept any of those types of complaints. My employer is in Sun Prairie. Can I file a complaint with you? Yes. Again, however, all complaints occurring outside of our jurisdiction, which is just the city of Madison, will be transferred to ERD for investigation. Again, thanks to that work sharing agreement. Can I file for someone else? It depends. Yes, if the person is a minor and or you are the parent, legal guardian, or power of attorney. This is a formal process and the complaint does belong to the person filling out the complaint form. If you're noticing potential discrimination, but you haven't actually experienced it yourself, you can use our report discrimination link to let us know. Typically not a lot is done with that if we're being honest, but it's more that data collection of if we're noticing that certain areas or certain things keep coming up, then the Equal Opportunities Commission can actually file a complaint on behalf of the public, and they could look into an issue like this. But we would have to kind of see either a really gross negligent type of report come in, or seeing that there's kind of a commonality happening. So with filing for someone else, if let's say you're talking with someone in the community and you're hearing that it sounds like they may have experienced discrimination, you can absolutely walk through the portal. You can put in all the information for them, but when it comes to the very end to submit that complaint, they really need to be the one attesting the information is correct, agreeing to participate in the process, and ultimately signing their name. We're not going to do any sort of notary or to actually check. My tip to you, if you are helping someone file the complaint, is don't put your name on it or don't sign for them, because we automatically know that someone else did it. But we take it on their word when that signature is on there that it belongs to the person who is filing that complaint. Can I file against a person? No, we can only investigate discrimination complaints against a business or a legal entity unless it is a landlord who by their name is the legal business or entity. And what happens if the discrimination is outside of Madison? You can absolutely still use our website to submit a complaint. Complaints alleging discrimination outside of Madison are going to be opened and automatically transferred to our sister agency at the state of Wisconsin Equal Rights Division, again, thanks to our work sharing agreement. And a complaint is never going to be sent back because the alleged discrimination happened outside of Madison. A few reasons that community members outside of Madison would still choose to use our portal to file complaints are accessibility, language access. It's available in 6 different languages. Our response time. Madison's a smaller agency with less inflow of complaints and faster processing times, usually within 10 days of receiving the complaint. So filing that complaint of discrimination. So how to file a complaint. You can go to our online portal. It's available via any internet-capable device, a smartphone, a tablet, laptop, or even a computer at your local library. As I said, it's available in 6 different languages. If it's not available in a preferred language, we can get a translated version for folks. We also have a phone service called Language Line. If someone calls our office and needs a translator, that can be provided at any time. We're unable to take a complaint over the phone. What we would do is send them an email with a link to our portal, possibly our community partners if they need assistance writing that out. Because we are a neutral agency, we cannot help someone actually file their complaint. that shows bias and preference to one side versus another. And if someone needs an accommodation for a paper copy, that can be mailed to them. So what happens after a complaint is submitted or filed? So our intake staff are going to review for what we call prima facie, and that is, did it happen in the city of Madison? Did it happen within the time limit, 300 days? It has to be filed within 300 days of the most recent incident of discrimination for employment or public accommodations, or 365 years, think 1 year, 1 lease term for housing cases. And then that prima facie aspect, are they a member of a protected class? Did they suffer an adverse action? And most importantly, does it appear that that adverse action was motivated by that membership in a protected class? So the stages, it's intake, like we just talked about. The first step after we open a complaint and serve it to the parties is mediation. Mediation is usually scheduled about 3 weeks out. That is a informal and voluntary opportunity for the parties to come together to seek some sort of a resolution before this would move any further. If mediation isn't successful, or if one of the parties doesn't want to attend, it goes to investigation, which is what I do. It's a fact-finding process where the investigator is going to ask questions or draft a questionnaire for each party to get answers based on the information that's provided in that original complaint. Different questions are going to be asked of the respective parties, and the investigator may send out several questionnaires until they feel that they've gathered all the information needed to be able to make a decision of whether they believe the respondent violated the Equal Opportunities Ordinance or not. And that is called an initial determination. That usually happens about 90 to 150 days after that case is assigned to an investigator. Depending upon the outcome of that initial determination, conciliation could be the next step, and that is another informal voluntary settlement conference. Depending on the outcome of conciliation, hearing would be the next step. I know we're running short on time. Pat, you told me 45 minutes?
No, you can go till 11, no problem. This is very interesting.
So to focus a little bit on the mediation, the settlements, the awards, the remedy to complainants, because I know this is something you asked about, Pat. In mediation, conciliation, hearing, these settlements and awards can happen. They can be monetary as well as non-monetary. On the left side of the screen, you can see the different monetary settlements and awards that came as the result of either mediation, conciliation, or hearing, from $232,000 to $117,000, just depending upon what the parties agree to. Some of it is at the hearing level damages that are awarded by the hearing examiner, but a vast majority of this is money that was agreed upon by the parties in mediation or conciliation. Some of those financial pieces could be attorney fees, they could be moving expenses, it could be a difference in rent or lost wages. Other potential remedies and outcomes, and again, these are case specific, it's what the parties can agree upon. It could be a discrimination training for the respondent through our office, a letter of reference, a reinstatement or their job. It could just be as simple as an apology. People just sometimes want to be heard and they want to hear, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. It could be a vacant unit. It could be a renewed lease. That has been a big one as of lately. It's all what the parties mutually agree upon in return for withdrawing the case. Our mediators and conciliators are there as neutral parties only. And for the monetary aspect, these are the settlement details that we are actually made aware of. There are some private settlement agreements that happen just between the parties, and we aren't privy to what those dollar amounts are. So we talked about kind of that case processing flow. So the initial determination, that is where the investigator decides, was there no probable cause for discrimination? If that's the case, there is a 15-day appeal period. If the complainant does not appeal that decision, the case is completely closed. If the complainant appeals that decision, it then goes to a review by our hearing examiner, who will then either affirm no discrimination occurred, or they may overturn a decision, say there is probable cause for discrimination, or in that initial determination came out as probable cause, meaning that there is probable cause to believe at that stage that they believe the respondent violated the Equal Opportunities Ordinance. After that point, it's assigned a conciliation. It's that, again, informal voluntary opportunity to seek settlement. If conciliation is successful, the parties go through whatever it is to their settlement agreement. Usually there's some sort of a signed disclosure between the parties, and then the complainant would withdraw their complaint with us and we close it. If conciliation is unsuccessful, or if a party doesn't want to attend, it then goes to public hearing. The public hearing is kind of, it works like a civil trial. The parties provide evidence in their case, and our administrative law judge or our hearing examiner makes a decision on whether or not the respondent violated the Equal Opportunities Ordinance, and they could potentially award some damages in that case. Any questions on kind of that flow chart? I mean, this is a real crash course for you all.
Actually, it's pretty clear. Thank you.
Good. Again, trying to make this as simple as possible for folks to have an understanding of what we do. Something that we always want to throw out there is the Lawyers for Learners. It's a free community resource. It does not have to be for folks who are at Madison College. It's for anyone in the community who is needing some sort of legal aid. You can reach out to them and they can try to help connect you with an attorney who could provide possibly free or low-cost legal assistance to you. Our office does also provide an attorney referral list. These are attorneys who have represented either the complainant or the respondent in different discrimination complaints, people who are accepting new clients should someone want to seek legal advice. At no point is an attorney required in the process. However, I would highly suggest for a complainant to be represented should a case get beyond the investigation stage, but they do tend to have better outcomes if they're represented the entire time. And it does tend to be a smoother process at mediations and conciliations if both parties are represented by attorneys. But again, we know that's not something that is available or cost effective for everyone. More often than not, the respondents are represented, but the complainants aren't. So I'm going to pause here for questions to see if there are any. Otherwise, I will switch screens and share that annual report to kind of go over some of those data points that the Common Council likes to see.
Chelsea, give us an idea of the kinds of people that you typically see. You know, people like us, people of color, gender problems. What's typical of the kinds of things you investigate?
That's where that annual report is going to be helpful, because we'll talk about the most seen. So I'll jump to that. So allegations are those protections that people would check off on their complaint form. The top 5 that we saw last year, race was the #1 complaint that came in. Disability was #2. Color was #3. People often interchange race and color. In society, they're pretty synonymous, but they are very different under the ordinance. Race refers to that group or that people that you belong to, where color is the actual color of your skin, light skin versus dark skin. The 4th most received complaint was for retaliation. And then the 5th one was regarding sex.
Interesting.
So looking at the types of complaints received, last year, we received a total of 342 complaints. Of those, 124 of them were perfected, meaning that they met prima facie, meaning that they showed a protected class, they suffered an adverse action, and most importantly, that adverse action was motivated by their membership in a protected class. That's what's often missing, is there's not that connection between the adverse action and their protected class. Of those perfected complaints, we transferred 34 of them to the state of Wisconsin for Equal Rights Division because we did not have jurisdiction. For them, 205 of the total complaints that we received were from employment. 75 of them were housing complaints. Do I need to make that screen a little bit bigger?
No, it's fine. Oh,
Okay. So I can make it a little bigger. 40 of them were public accommodations, 5 were city services, and 17 complaints were through Chapter 32 retaliation. So that is before we had our new protection for building code complainants. We had a work sharing agreement with building inspections where if someone believed that they were retaliated because they contacted building inspections, we investigated that on their behalf. And there were 17 of those last year. Of the cases that were at investigation, 60 went there. 27 of those cases that received a decision, 27 were found to be no probable cause. 6 were a mixed decision, meaning that the investigator found both probable cause and no probable cause allegations within that complaint. So some issues did have probable cause where others did not. 5 complaints or cases were found to be probable cause, 8 were withdrawn, and 16 were dismissed. The dismissals usually happen because either there's a lack of jurisdiction or the complainant doesn't participate. That's the biggest thing that we find is that people think that filing their complaint is enough, but they have to participate throughout the entire process. So last year, there were 45 cases or complaints that settled at early mediation. Again, that's that first step in the process. 12 of them settled at conciliation, and there was a combined estimate of the settlement amount that came through for $354,118 just at settlement or at conciliation and mediation. There were 6 cases that were certified to hearing, but no hearings were actually held. Our hearing examiner conducted 5 no probable cause reviews, meaning that 5 people appealed their no probable cause decision to the hearing examiner. The hearing examiner made 5 decisions on those no probable cause reviews. And the commission itself, once a case gets to a certain point, they can appeal it to the Equal Opportunities Commission. And the commission had 2 decisions that came before them. What happens after the commission makes a decision is someone still has appeal possibilities, but that would go to the circuit court and it would be completely out of our hands. But that Equal Opportunities Commission is our governing body, and that is ultimately where complaints land as the final step of our process. So we still did trainings, education, and outreach last year. We did 67 total events. 46 of those were trainings, 4 were certifications, so our certified community partners, and 17 outreach events. And where in the past we were previously reaching, maybe 100 people, last year we reached 2,085 people through our trainings, outreach, and events. Some of our partner organizations that we had different things going on, just saying, obviously, the Department of Workforce Development with our monthly job center training, with the County of Dane and the Department of Human Services. We did some, Jesus, who was our former bilingual investigator, did several different podcasts or radio talks with 2 different Hispanic radio stations. Also did some work connecting with Me Wisconsin. And then at MATC, we are in the process of developing an investigator training program with them.
Great.
And then some accomplishments of the Equal Opportunities Division. Like I was sharing, we expanded our partnership with building inspections to investigate building inspection retaliation complaints on their behalf. And we actually amended the ordinance to expand those housing protections to complainants of building code violations. We expanded our training partnership with Madison College by developing an investigative training series. We started the process of updating the language of our work sharing agreement or contract with the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, and also now the state of Wisconsin, to when any complaints are filed with them, that they are going to transfer them to us for investigation as the agency with the lowest level of jurisdiction, because we have the most protections available to these people. We process the complaints the fastest. They have the most remedies available to them in our jurisdiction. So we're working on updating that as well. We started a conversation between city government and leaders of the Voices of Faith community. This came about because when the pandemic hit, there were all of these religious groups, churches, who had been doing a lot of the services that the city started to pick up on for homelessness, for food pantries. And instead of trying to recreate the wheel, why don't we extend that olive branch and start learning from the people who are doing this work, who have perfected this work, trying to call them in, seeing how we can get some of these religious organizations some government funding, grants for the work that they're doing, rather than trying to take on some of this work ourselves, leaning on the people in the community who are already doing it. And then we've collaborated with other county and state agencies and municipalities to expand and strengthen trainings and partnerships, mostly in the area of housing, trying to see if there is any way we can start to work at the state level to change some legislation to make housing more affordable and more equitable for all of those in the community. So that is my presentation for you all. Let me know what questions you have.
Chelsea, before there are any questions, I just want to say, we keep hearing, all of us, you know, this department in the city does this, there's this department. This was so educational for us to be able to understand exactly what a specific department in the city of Madison does, the services that are offered. It gives me hope.
A specific division within the department. There's a whole multitude of other things that the Department of Civil Rights does, but this is the public facing
That's
aspect.
great. Thank you so much. That was very clear, really great. Questions? Sue, I know you had a question.
Yeah, you need to prove neediness to use
Yeah.
Lawyers for Learners.
Financial need, or is it free for anybody?
That I don't know, Sue. It's not something that we do ourselves. It's something that Madison College started, and they have started working with some of the other tech schools to try to connect to some of the paralegal students or to other agencies. I know that that Legal Action is one of the big agencies that partners. I would assume with some of those that yes, they do want to see that there is a financial need in order to do pro bono work, or possibly for that sliding scale. But that's where you would have to reach out to Lawyers for Learners to see what their capacity is and who they connect you with and what it is that they need specifically.
Yeah, and Sue, I can add to that too. Legal Action is an organization. We had Heidi Lightweger speak here. And also Madison College has attorneys on staff to help the community, not just students, but it's almost always people who have no other access to legal assistance. It's a directive, I think. So yeah. Any other questions for Chelsea? That's how clear it was, Chelsea. Thank you so much. Thank you for
having me.
Yes, I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Barbara, as usual.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And very interesting.
Yeah, things